I'm just going to open this cool box, Dear Richard, on the Wiggly Podcast from Wiggly Wigglers in Blakemere and give you your present from Ross Boardman, 99 Station Street, Burton-on-Trent.
Look at these beauties. Oh, look at that. Tickle Brain Ale. Well, I've never tried it before, but 8%? I think that'll be rather fine.
I tried it. All sorts of things happened.
I bet you did. You wouldn't need any more of that bottle, would you, really?
And another.
Oh, wow. My golly. So 4 bottles of this beautiful black gem
I
of a
think
stuff.
that's a different sort.
OK, Empire. Oh, that's it. That's only weak at 7.5%. God.
That'll do for you.
Well done. Oh, cheers, Ross. Most appreciated. You had a great time, didn't you, I think?
It was excellent. Chef Dan cooked Farmer Phil's steak, and Ross said it was some of the best steak he'd ever eaten.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know where you were.
I couldn't make it, and in fact, that was of your making, because I was rushing. Well, actually, I was rushing, and I ended up in all sorts of difficulties consequently.
Yeah, well, you know, occasionally I think you should have a poker up your.
Yes.
I want to get you moving quicker.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
you have said that in the past.
I have. So, Rich, what happened to you?
Oh, God, well...
You don't want to say?
Well, OK.
Do you want to say?
OK, well, I may as well say. Now you've asked me and you've tried to tease it out of me. Because I was going down to Hampton Court to help out for the last 2 days of the Wiggly stand.
Thank you very much.
Which is incidentally very good. There was a good show, Hampton Court.
It was lovely, wasn't it?
I haven't been since I was 17 with my gran.
Yeah.
So anyway, fiddling around, and I'd had a strategy of the things I wanted to do before I set sail, but I just had to fit a couple more things in because a blinking little rabbit in the garden, had nipped off all the heads of the fennel. So I thought, swine. So I replanted some of the fennel because I thought it might happen, and so I kept some, replanted, put a little low fence, just some gridding I had around the fennel to give it some protection.
Is fennel a companion plant, or do you just
bulb fennel.
Yeah.
So I put in these little steel spikes around the fence to keep it upright, obviously, in these little panels. And the spikes are those little old sticks with triangles at the bottom, and then what would have had a little curly piece on the top to hold the electric.
That's electric sheep fencing.
That's right. Well, the little curly bits have long since gone, so you've got this flat-topped spike.
Yeah, you need some little covers on there.
Yeah, I know, little tennis balls or something like that.
Yeah, you need some little handmade covers.
Something
on there.
or other.
Some corks.
Corks will do. Corks will do it. But anyway, because so I was rushing, trying to get the extra little job that I thought I could just fit in
before the train went,
and before I had to get into Hereford to get a train.
Now stop there. Picture
Right.
the scene. I'm in Burton-on-Trent. Sam, who's coordinating Hampton Court with Rachel, has lost Richard. She phones me. I say, no worries, it's just come through on my iPhone that Ricardo is leaving the building. He's just getting on the train.
There you are, you see. So I had the foresight to contact you even to let you know what my movements were, so to speak. So anyway, during this process of completing the fencing, my vegetable patch, of course, is terraced, so the paths are slightly lower than the vegetable growing bit. So as I leapt over the little low fence, I hadn't taken into account the protrusion of 18 inches of steel spike above the little low fence, and promptly landed 14 stone of fishbone on top of the metal spike, missing my bumhole by a bumhole's width, impaling myself at a goodly 2.5 inches. And of course, it's quite soft tissue. I mean, it's soft tissue to the extent where, and as you land on it, it was that sensation of, it was just, you could hear sort of, and I thought, that's not good, that's not good. So, of course, I leapt off the said spike and thought, I could feel this warm fluid dribbling down my leg. That's not good. So, of course, I thought... So I shot into the shower and had to have a little explore just to see the kind of damage that I'd done. I felt quite poorly at this stage, I was feeling a little bit nauseous.
Yes.
So I thought, so I stuck my finger in the hole up to the second knuckle, the second thing on the finger.
And your fingers are quite long.
Well, it was a good 2 inches deep,
Yes.
Yeah. And so I thought, now I've got to go to my A&E. So I rang the taxi company that would come to pick me up to take to the train station. I said, could you do me a favour? Could you get here an hour earlier and take me to A&E rather than the train station? He said, oh yes, no problem. So anyway, straight to the train station. I got into A&E at 10 to 4.
Accident and emergency.
10 to 4. And I was on the train down to Newport to get me down to London at 20 to 5.
Very good,
Not bad,
Rich.
eh?
That's
Not bad.
What a stalwart you are.
I mean, the NHS,
the show must
I've got
go
to
on.
say, fair play to them. They are fabulous, as always. But, yeah, show must go on, yeah, my God. And so it wasn't really
stitches?
until Saturday it really started to... Because it was hurting, but it was Saturday... God, it was hurting big time, because, of course, that's when all the bruising came out, and it felt like I'd had a
spike
rugby
up your
ball and a third buttock almost, because the bruising was so bad. So, anyway, so, a couple of stitches and two different types of antibiotics I'm on now, just because there's a little bit of weeping going on.
Do you know, I know it's terrible, I'm very sorry that's happened, but you cannot imagine how glad I am that all these incidents, touch wood, seem to happen to you at your own abode. Because I just imagine the NFU claim for Ricardo injuries going into the million figures.
I think it's a funny thing. Well, it's like I told you when I told you this story first, is when you driving accidents, it tends to be that most people have traffic accidents close to home because it's something that they're familiar with. And
they're more often.
They're more often, certainly, yeah. But they're not thinking as much. So I think when you're working, elsewhere other than in your own immediate, very familiar environment, then you just don't think as much, and that's exactly what happens to me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. This is a public service announcement to all those gardeners all over the world. Be very careful when in your garden, and if you do insist on being so tight that you're going to go and get a farmer's old sheep fencing, do make sure you put a cork on top of the spike. Otherwise, you will need a cork in your
bottle
butthole.
or anything, really. I have put plastic bottles there before, because it is dangerous. I mean, it is silly, really. It's worth putting plastic bottles or tennis balls or something like that on any bamboo canes or spikes and things like that, because you don't know, you can do yourself a real mischief. And folks have died, actually, from falling on things and impaling themselves, haven't they?
Oh,
so there you go. So it could have been a lot worse. Could have been a lot worse.
Let's go and have a Montycast.
The Montycast, a weekly fact on wiggliness. My cousin Alfie is in the Wiggly Open Day video when asked his favourite thing, and he says, "Power Rangers, another Montycast next week on the Wiggly Podcast."
Listen, Rich, what I really want to know is what have you been up to in your garden before we go to Richard's chicken piece?
Okay, well, the garden's looking particularly fabulous because we've had the most wonderful growing season. I'm dead concerned, though, that all this rain is going to predispose blight on my tomatoes again. I want my beautiful tomatoes. In fact, Megan's black Krim got some beautiful, big, chunky tomatoes looking absolutely fabulous, but... if we keep getting rain, the outdoor tomatoes ain't going to like it very much at all.
Farmer Phil's worried about flattening of his barley.
Yeah, flattening. I walked through a barley field last night, and there was quite a lot of flattening going on. I went fishing just down the Y, this evening, and it is.
And Farmer Phil's got a great way of sorting that bit out, though.
Right.
He's not going to look.
Okay,
I thought that's quite good.
That's really a good idea. Yeah, well, you don't make yourself worry unnecessarily, because there's nothing you can do about it, is there? First year I've ever had rabbits in the vegetable patch, and I shot a little baby rabbit in a separate piece that I'd fenced off that I had my French beans and my sweet corn in the other day. I've never ever bothered with culling the rabbits around the house before, but this year I've been just bumping off half a dozen every other day, because there's just I've never seen rabbits like it. It's just a plague of
Are they
bunnies
breeding
everywhere.
like rabbits?
Breeding like rabbits.
Have you ate them?
We don't eat them. I keep them. The dogs have them. So what I do is I skin them and then give the dogs half each, and they love that.
What do you do with the skin?
Fresh meat. Well, sometimes I chuck it. Sometimes I put it in a compost heap.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's got. In fact, the compost heap that the courgettes and growing in with all the chicken manure is full of pigeon and rabbit carcasses. It's sometimes a bit dodgy doing that, because you can get foxes and the dogs might try and dig them out of there. So
for those people that are thinking, oh, poor little furry bunny rabbit, if you were letting nature run its course, you'd have to put up with that. How do you justify that?
Well, of course, rabbits. You've got to keep them down. I mean, they've been kept there since time began, and they're probably not kept down anywhere near as much as they used to. What tends to happen is you get these kind of seasonal inundations of myxomatosis, which knocks the population sideways, and then they start to grow again. But this year, there's been no myxomatosis around, which is quite nice because there's nothing more miserable than a rabbit that's got myxi kind of stood there looking decidedly poorly by the side of the road or something. They also get something, they get a kind of white liver disease as well if the population gets too large, and then they ultimately, if the population gets too large, they die off anyway, so they have to be controlled. So I think what tends to happen is when the population becomes too dense, they really do push the boundaries, and they will try and force each other out into the wider realm, and they do try and encroach into the vegetable patch a lot more.
Do they come in the day, or we haven't got rabbits?
Yeah, they come in the day as well. Yeah, they do come in the day, especially little ones, because of course they're often the ones with the biggest appetites. The little ones, milky does, things like that, they're really going to be stuffing their faces right through the day, dark and light. But yeah, real menace this year, so quite disappointing on the bunny front. So we've been up against it a bit, but having said that, the parsnips, the celeriac, the best crop of peas imaginable this year.
Oh, I've got good peas.
Beautiful peas,
yeah.
Have you?
Lovely.
And have you been stuffing your face with them?
I have.
It's hard to beat, a freshly cracked pea. I mean, you do tend to find when you're picking them, you'll scoff as many as go in the pan. They're beautiful. And runner beans, they were not runner beans. Broad beans were fabulous this year. No aphids on the broad beans. It's funny how the fortune of the garden has changed year on year. You can never predict, not at all, what's going to happen in terms of climate or pest infestations or anything. It's just usually with the broad beans, you get some black fly on there. Not a bit this year. Didn't have any at all. I mean, I always pinch the tips out, at the right time to make sure that you get fewer than you might. But yeah, no, very little at all. Haven't seen many ladybirds either. I did see some ladybirds the other day. In somebody else's garden, some nice little 7 spots, but
nicked them, did you?
Not that many around. Yeah, I should have brought them back to the folly. Yeah, but generally the garden's looking very good. But what we don't want now is too much more rain.
Did you know that if you've got a good population of earthworms in your soil, that 5% of the soil is earthworm burrows?
5%, as high as that?
Yes.
Right, that's interesting.
So that means drainage and aeration.
Yeah, it does. And paradoxically, better moisture retention because of all that beautiful organic material they're dragging down into the soil. But I hadn't realised the figure was quite that high. That's
amazing,
interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Up to it's very variable, but a good earthworm population, there's 1 million per acre.
1 million per acre?
Yeah.
Right. What a wonderful thing. Well, it's certainly in Herefordshire where we can boast some of the oldest traditional orchards that are still intact. I mean, those kind of environments will be able to sustain those kind of populations of earthworms. That kind of undisturbed situation where there's plenty of leaf litter, natural grazing, things like that. Then they'll be incredibly healthy environments. And ultimately, those kind of environments are the ones that are so useful for the sequestration of greenhouse gases and things as well.
Absolutely. We got an article coming out this month in Grow Your Own magazine.
Right.
All about worms.
Oh, brilliant.
Isn't that
That's
cool?
really good. That
1,500
is really
words about worms.
Fabulous.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. Who wrote it?
I did.
Did you?
Oh,
that would be really good.
heck. Hopefully, Lucy will have edited it, eh? Like Mary normally does for me. Anyway, let's go and see what Posy Rosie is up to in the florist and what this week's flowers are. Because I don't know if you've been in there, Rich.
I did. I went to see the ladies just as I walked through. I went to see because I hadn't seen Laurie for ages, and I wanted to say hello to gorgeous Rosie as well.
And the smell?
The smell is stunning. The flowers smell quite nice as well.
Here we are. Quick stop in the Wiggly Florist, meeting up with Posy. Hi, Pose.
Hello.
Now, I want to know what flowers we've got in, because last night I brought the agricultural secretaries in here, and they went, ooh, and ah, and ooh, and ah, and they loved all the different flowers. It's a fantastic display this time of year.
We got some Stargazer lilies.
Let's have a look.
They smell amazing. We got some asters and Alstroemeria.
Yes.
Nigella.
Nigella.
Yeah. Cornflowers.
Lovely.
Pinks.
What are those lovely blue, faded, gorgeous flowers in the corner that look like fluff?
That's Nigella.
Oh, isn't that gorgeous?
It is really pretty.
What else?
Agapanthus.
Right.
Stocks.
All stocks. Show me a
Yeah.
stock.
And these smell really nice as well.
Right, now I will try and describe the smell, but you know, dear listener, I haven't got any smell, but... Oh yes, I can vaguely smell something. And you've been out in Farmer Phil's fields.
Yeah.
It's barley and wheat this week, is it?
Mostly wheat, because I think the barley's gone over a little bit now.
Yeah.
To be used in bouquets, so it's mostly wheat. And we've also got delphiniums as well.
Delphiniums, gorgeous. Yeah. Thank you very much. So this week's bouquet will be mostly lovely. Right, Rich, so how is the hen keeping going?
Yeah, the hen keeping's going very well indeed. And I thought it was about time for another little piece on keeping chickens. So this will be the second piece on keeping chickens. The third piece will look a little bit more on chicken health and some of the finer points and possibly some of the difficulties people may encounter.
Oh, a troubleshooting chicken.
A troubleshooting chicken, yeah, for sure.
On we go.
Very good. Well, welcome to the second part of a series of 3 all about keeping chickens. I'm just letting my birds out now. I just wandered up, they're all eager to come out of their shelter. I always feed the chickens with a mixed corn, and I put them in a trough because it just means that it's more contained then, and you tend to find that if you've got problems with rats, then you can always pick it up and put it away during the night. I use mixed corn because they get the nutrients they need from a mix of maize and sunflowers and wheat. And you know, there's quite a lot of the small bird seed that they really enjoy. So a real treat is to give them a nice mixed bag of quality bird seed. Or even poor quality bird seed actually, because you've got all the wheat in there, so it's not such a bad thing for hens. I tend to avoid pellets and things like that purely because you don't know where the ingredients have come from. If they're made of soya, then ultimately you might well be responsible for the demise of the rainforest, purely so that you can have something to feed your chickens with, which is, you know, kind of weird. So I suppose the best thing to do is get a nice local source of mixed grains, mixed cereals. These eyes have come out. I always put my chickens away at night, you know, because there's always that chance that Foxy Loxy or Mr. Brock will come along during the night and you know, take a bird, and then of course you'd be gutted to find a few little corpses or absolutely nothing in the morning. So it's always worth making sure that you just close the door on them at night, or even if you're away, you know, just get a friend or a neighbour to pop up and put them away. You can get those automatic doors now that sort of up and close themselves, but my only concern with that would be that they could shut the chickens out as well as in. I've got a couple of drinkers. Very important to make sure the chickens have got, especially in the summertime, plenty of fresh water. You know, they really need it. They do drink quite a lot, in fact. They're on grass, my birds, as well. That makes a huge difference to the quality of the egg. You get a very deep orangey yolk if they've got fresh grass, and they do graze. I mean, I'm watching one of my birds here, Warren, in fact, just plucking away at the grass. You know, she's supplementing the grains that she's just eaten with some lovely new grass. You do get a beautiful quality egg. I just had boiled eggs for breakfast. Stunning. I've got a cockerel. He's not very nice. He's going, actually, but I think it's quite nice to have a cockerel. I mean, the crowing is a wonderful thing. It's difficult, I know, if you've got neighbours close by that might not want to be woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but they do sort of maintain an equilibrium amongst the hens as well. You do have a pecking order amongst the hens. The cockerel does seem to keep everyone slightly calmer. I've got an electric fence around the chickens. Oddly, you tend to find that if you touch it, you don't get that much from it. Sometimes you can feel a little tingle, but I think it's the fact that foxes and the like can sense there's an electrical current going through it, and consequently they just avoid going near it. The charge that goes through the fence as well is affected to quite an extent by the grass that grows up underneath my fence. And my strim, I've been waiting for a part for my strimmer for 2 weeks now. Usually I sort of move the fence and strim and then sort of put it back. And of course the beauty with an electric fence is I can quite literally, whilst I can't move the chicken coop, I can move the run around the coop, and consequently they're getting some fresh grazing the whole time, and that also reduces the likelihood of picking up and of course of parasitic worms and the like building up in the soil. Things are slowed down. You tend to find that chickens do slow down in laying, and you tend to get this kind of hiatus in the spring, and the autumn it picks up again, and there's a couple of months in the winter where you get absolutely nothing at all. But generally speaking, out of the 7, 9, 10 birds I've got, we get them, we will get probably 3 eggs a day at the moment, but we can get anything up to 8 or 9 eggs a day, which is far more than Sarah and I use, but it's a wonderful thing to be able to have to give away to friends and family, because the taste from a bird that's eaten grain and that's been on fresh grazing in a wonderfully natural situation tastes 100 times superior to anything you'll ever buy, even for that matter an organic free range egg. You do get attached to your chickens. These birds, some are several years old now, and we'll just keep them until they peg it, but a hen can live to 10 years, something like that, and one day you'll just come out and they will have just carked it. And of course the other thing that's particularly good about keeping chickens is the byproduct. Chicken manure is fantastic fertiliser. Needs to rot down before you put it on the garden, but what I tend to do is pile it up, and you get all the wonderful bedding. I use straw for bedding. It's always good to have a nice layer of straw underneath the roosts, because it means when the birds come off the roost and they've got a relatively soft landing. So, and the problem with wood shavings is it takes longer to break down, incredibly high in carbon. Sawdust, not a good idea, because you get quite a lot of dust and it might affect them, it might affect their breathing, certainly if they're breathing in dust like that. What I do is pile up all the clearings from the chicken house, let it rot down, and every year I plant all my squashes and courgettes and cucumbers and things in it, as well as the horse manure that I leave to rot down before I put it on the garden at the end of the year. And I harvested my first cucumber yesterday, in fact. What a beauty. It's got the whole thing for lunch. And it's incredible. That's quite early, to be perfectly honest. But as I look at these squashes now, they're amazing things. I mean, they just turn into triffids. They do so well in these compost heaps. And of course, it contains the moisture beautifully. And it's so rich, they adore it. I don't use the compost that I put the chicken manure in, because I also put all my weeds on there as well. And the problem with that is, if I did use a compost again, I'd be transferring some of the weed seeds onto the garden, and it's not a hot composting heap. I can't be sure that the seeds are going to die, so I just leave it in situ and just plant those juicy squashes into it every year. I've got George, one of my Jack Russells, out with me now, just looking up at me, wagging his tail, and he's stood about a foot away from the cockerel. They just, when we first got the chickens, I remember the dogs were paying us slightly too much attention to the chickens, but they get used to them, and then they don't even consider them after a while. But it's certainly worth, if you've got dogs and cats, just making sure that they get used to one another before you introduce them. Your proximity is a bit close, because otherwise you might end up with dead chickens. I clip the chickens' wings as well. It's kind of important to do. What you tend to find, if you forget to do it, as I've done in the past, they obviously molt and they put their primary feathers back on. And on a windy day, especially, when they can get a little bit of a leverage against the wind, you can come out and find them all over the place, because I think, opportunity knocks, you can get over that fence. So I just clip, one wing is the thing to do. Just clip a few of the primary feathers on one wing, and it just means that they're slightly lopsided, so they can't get any real height. It doesn't hurt at all. Worth being a little bit careful. It's almost a two-man job, spread the wing out while your partner just snips the feathers. What you want to be careful of is not to cut the too close to the bone. You wouldn't want to injure the poor bird or anything. But obviously if you're just cutting the feathers, they can't feel a thing. It doesn't seem to bother them a bit. Got a few things of interest in the pen that the chickens can jump onto. It's worth having some old rotten branches, old tree stumps, and perhaps some roughish, kind of rough and ready roosts in the run, just to give them something to jump up onto, something that's a little bit interesting. And shade, that's really important. They do like shade. They love to dust bathe, so they'll scratch like mad. I mean, they'll wreck a garden if you allow them to roam freely. But shade is all important. They need to get out to that blistering sun in the summertime. I spend a lot of time relaxing, especially in the afternoon. Mornings you tend to find they'll come out and they'll scoot around the run looking for worms and bugs that have gathered during the night. And then they'll feed on the grain, and then in the afternoon they tend to chill out quite a lot. Quite a lot of mating goes on in the afternoon as well, I think. The hens will eat practically anything, They love the scraps. They love the scraps from the kitchen. And what's quite a nice thing to do in the winter time is keep your potato peeling, just boil them up, and mix them with some grain and throw that to them. And they love that kind of mushy sort of mash. And that's a fantastic treat. But I've seen, if a slow worm manages to get into the chicken run, the poor old thing tends not to get out. It's a bit of a tug of war. And what I often do at the end of the year, when the mice are seeking refuge in the sheds, I'll set mouse traps, not because they can get at the grain or cause any real problems, but because invariably they'll have scoffed a reasonable percentage of runner beans and broad beans during the growing season. So it's more of a kind of revenge thing to catch the mice. And after I catch one, I'll just chuck it into the chicken run. And I think that's the most amazing thing. So you often end up a mouse with has shared around the whole flock by the time they've exchanged it a few times. But yeah, it doesn't seem to do them any harm. They quite like that, and it's recycling really. I think that's it for this episode. Next time we'll talk a little bit more about parasites and looking after your bird's hygiene, cleaning out, things like that. Okay.
Thank you, Richard. That was most informative.
Very good. Sounded very convinced.
Have you got any chickens for meat?
There's 4, but we've had a bit of poor success with the broody hens this year, but there's 4 that are awaiting their fate. And I'm just about to fill the incubator up ready so that I'll have a bunch of birds ready for about Christmas time.
Oh.
Are you going to try that at all?
I'd like to.
It is a bit of a taste sensation, because they are, especially when they're sort of fattened on maize and grass, and a few other choice bits and pieces thrown in to boot, scraps from the kitchen and stuff like that. They do seem to have, they seem to be very flavoursome.
Delicious. Thank you, Rich, for this week's podcast. Now, you'll have listened to last week's and wondered why we're not reading out any comments, and it's because they're all coming into next week's. So, if you see what I mean, last week's we can't speak about this week, we will next week. So, if you have got concerns about set aside or are wound up about Farmer Phil's and my podcast last week, then next week we will address that issue. So enjoy your week. Have a lovely wiggly week from Wiggly Wigglers. And if you want some rosy posy flowers, they are looking particularly flowery. Rosy posy. Bye.
Bye. I heard on the radio the other day, it's really funny, I thought it was quite funny anyway, there's a chap, he said, yeah, I was at a party the other day and I was talking to someone, they were talking about Chicken Run, and he said, Chicken Run, that's based on a true story, isn't it? They said, yeah, is it? I said, yeah. Yeah, you know, a whole bunch of chickens got together and built a plane so they could escape from a factory, the chicken factory. Anyway, I thought it was funny.
I didn't get it, sorry.
It's the fact that somebody was gullible to go, is it?
Oh, I see, I was wondering, is it?
Oh, no.